there's been a lot of talk about fake news and propaganda, but if you've ever come across a publication on social media platforms known as the Epoch Times, just know that it is not a fair and balanced publication. In fact, you probably came across some of the conspiracy theories that they're pushing out there. It is a very pro-Trump organization, and it turns out that behind the scenes, it's being run by a, to be kind, religious organization, to be unkind, a cult. So let me give you some more details. Now there's been an extensive report on this both in the New Yorker and in NBC News. And the Epoch Times is apparently a small New York-based nonprofit news outlet that has spent more than $1.5 million on about 11,000 pro-Trump advertisements in just the last 6 months. More than any organization outside of the Trump campaign itself, and more than most Democratic presidential candidates have spent on their own campaigns. The video ads peddle conspiracy theories about the deep state and criticize fake news media and strike a familiar tone in the online conservative news ecosystem. Now, this spiritual group behind the Epoch Times is against atheists, it's against communism, and so they see Donald Trump as a way to fight any type of rise in communism or atheism in the world, and certainly in the United States as well. I have more details, but Cenk, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, so this Falun Gong's both hilarious and deeply disturbing. They preach against the wickedness of homosexuality, feminism, and popular music. Well, I think they nailed it on popular music. That's really what's causing all the problems. So what are the answers? QAnon, Spygate, pedophilia rings, and this has amounted to 3 billion views a month.
It's crazy, yeah.
Which is the 11th largest video outlet in all of social media and #1 in so-called news. So I don't know how they're getting those numbers. I don't think that it's organic. I think that they're probably buying a lot of those views, but I don't know that for a fact. But the fact that they've got all this money they're spending on pro-Trump ads, spreading insane conservative conspiracy theories is deeply disturbing. And we haven't gotten to some of the best parts yet.
Exactly, so let me tell you a little more about the religion behind this. The media outlet's ownership and operation is closely tied to what Cenk referenced earlier, Falun Gong, a Chinese spiritual community with the stated goal of taking down China's government. And also, it is so rabidly pro-Trump, they believe that Trump was sent by heaven to destroy the Communist Party. Also
That's likely.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely destroying things. They're right about that. The Epoch Times brought in $8.1 million in revenue in 2017, double what it had the previous year, and also reported spending $7.2 million on printing newspaper and creating web and media programs. Now,
I don't believe any numbers that they give. The only number I believe is the one from Tubular Labs that is actually an independent organization that tracks these. And so they do have the 3 billion views. We don't know how they got them. In terms of where their money comes from, et cetera, and whether they really have that kind of revenue or cost, it's unclear.
So let me give you some more. The leader of this group, this religious group, taught that sickness is a symptom of evil that can only be truly cured with meditation and devotion. But it's like this weird, like, I don't know, poor man's version of meditation, right? And stretching. Which is weird, like I don't, you should read the details about that because it's fascinating. And that aliens from undiscovered dimensions have invaded the minds and bodies of humans,
obviously,
bringing corruption and inventions such as computers and airplanes.
Well, who doesn't know that?
So, but like Trump, I mean it failed, but Trump had his own airline. So like, what about that?
Okay, so like at first, when you hear about Falun Gong, they made meditation a little easier, right? Apparently it was a very complicated thing. I don't know much about it in yoga and all the different exercises, et cetera. And they're like, yeah, that's too complicated. Let's just simplify it, make it simpler for people to be able to do quickly, et cetera. Kind of like the fast food of meditation and yoga. So far, yeah, that makes sense. Sounds good. And I have no problem. And sometimes you'll see Falun Gong people doing exercises in the park, okay? That sounds lovely, there's nothing wrong with that. And they're like, and by the way, the aliens took over people and of course brought us evil airplanes and computers. Yeah, that took a turn. That's not remotely true. And then it gets dangerous when they say, do not use medicine. Instead, you can just meditate away your sicknesses. Well, that's gonna get people killed. And I'm sure it already has, probably to a lot of their followers. Because if you got cancer and you don't treat it and you try to meditate it away, you know what happens? You die. It's not remotely true. Don't believe any of that.
So look, here's the thing. The right wingers in America have this crazy group putting out pro-Trump propaganda. Then you have the family, which hosts the National Prayer Breakfast. TYT Investigates has done incredible reporting on that. But there's also a great documentary series on Netflix about them. And they're like a dark, shadowy organization behind the scenes trying to prop up the worst people in society. And they love the income inequality, the wealth inequality we have in America. Then of course, you have Fox News. Like, my point is, there are very well-organized bad actors working their magic while the left is doing what? Like, look, I'm happy that I'm seeing more people organizing, getting active, but it needs to be aggressive, it needs to be strategic, there needs to be a broad coalition. And for now, I think it's incredibly important for the left to not get caught up in debating little things and discussing microaggressions. We gotta be hyper focused on organizing and being incredibly inviting, because again, they are way better organized than we are.
So look, now this is another outside group. The Russians were helping Trump, and Mitch McConnell blocked our ability to do anything about that. Now you have anti-Chinese people, or anti-Chinese government Chinese people that are also spending millions of dollars to help Trump. This is madness. Our elections have just turned into an auction where they're like, oh, the anti-Chinese are bidding on Trump. By the way, if the anti-Chinese government people are bidding on Trump, wouldn't that encourage the Chinese to go bid on the Democrats? And are the Republicans gonna be okay with that? The Chinese have a lot of money. The Chinese government could be like, oh, the Russians and Falun Gong are on Trump's side. All right, why don't we put 20, 40, what are we talking about, millions? Why don't we put $1, $2, $10 billion on the Democratic side? Because apparently America's for sale.
It's crazy. Okay. And by the way, they have like, they're working all these different angles. So you have the Epoch Times, but that ain't it. That isn't the only thing they're focusing on. In fact, if you want to be part of this spiritual movement, as they're calling it, you have to volunteer. So you volunteer by either working for one of these publications under their umbrella, or you can volunteer for the Shenyang dancing group. Right?
Yeah, I was thinking of going for that.
The Shenyang dancing group, they're behind that.
I know, who knew that? Like, haven't you seen this? I've seen this in 1,000 places,
of course,
right?
They spend all their money on advertising.
I know, right? They have what appears to be an unlimited source of money. So that's why all the Trump ads, that's why all the spending online, and then these.
That was kind of amazing.
Yeah, actually, that's pretty good. Okay, but like this is some sort of weird attempt to brainwash you.
No, but I gotta tell you how. So it has this anti-communist message. At one point, like this evil like monster shows up in the middle of the show, and it's Karl Marx.
That's hilarious. Look, I debated against Hassan on Agitprop, and I supported capitalism, and he was against it. But I did not do any Falun Gong to then go, Karl Marx is a smoke god. All right, look, last things that are hilarious about this, as otherwise a disastrous story. One of the companies involved here is the New Tang Dynasty, which to be fair is nothing to mess with.
You're the worst. God, what a dork.
Okay, and so of course they're also against Muslims. Of course, there's gonna be a hilarious part of that in a second. But they're also against illegal immigration. Except they encourage their people to go to their retreat or their compound in New York. And if they're on a visa, they immediately get them an arranged marriage to people who are already part of the compound that are US citizens, which is a violation of our immigration laws. But they arrange that, and then they turn around and go, "Oh, can you believe the undocumented immigrants? Donald Trump is so right about undocumented immigrants." Now, this is all according to the reporting from NBC, and you should read it for yourself. It's amazing. We'll put a link down below if you're watching this later on YouTube and Facebook, so you can read it. And then, so back to the Muslims. In the Pulse shooting, one of the reporters later told him, "Hey, listen, we had to cover the Pulse shooting to say how bad Muslims were, but the organization hates gays. So I couldn't write the word gay in there, but while trying to blame the Muslims for killing gays, I couldn't say gays." So, I mean, it is like a jigsaw puzzle of hatred and fear and cult.